Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, we'll be talking about the Starlink V2 Mini internet satellites from SpaceX. Please remember to like and subscribe. Now let's get right into it. Fact 1. 4 times more bandwidth. The Starlink V2 Mini satellites is a step in a increase in bandwidth of the Starlink satellite internet system. The V2 Minis include key technologies such as powerful phased array antennas and the use of E-band for backhaul. And because of these new technologies, it allows these satellites to have 4 times more bandwidth capacity per satellite than earlier iterations. The earlier iterations include the version 1 of the Starlink satellites. It is not a surprise that these satellites are more powerful and contains more bandwidth because the current existing V1 Starlink system is oversubscribed and people are complaining that it's getting slower and slower. So SpaceX needs the V2 Minis to increase that bandwidth. Alright, let's get into the next fact. Fact 2. Not actually small. Now, despite the name V2 Mini, it's not really actually smaller than the V1. In fact, it's much larger and much heavier than the V1 version. When you say V2 Mini, SpaceX actually means it is a mini version of the V2 version. The V2 version has not been rolled out and is designed to be launched using the Starship system. The Starship system is much larger than Falcon 9, and so it could launch much heavier payloads. The Starlink V2 system and the V2 satellites have not been produced or tested, and currently the V2 Minis present a step in that direction from V1, and because of that, try to think of V2 Mini as a newer version of the V1 rather than a smaller version of V1. Because as I just mentioned, it is actually much larger and heavier. In fact, for V2 Minis, each Falcon 9 rocket could only take 21 of them up into the sky, as compared to V1 versions, where it could take more satellites per payload. As you may know, weight is a significant restriction in launching things into orbit. Alright, let's get into the next fact. Fact 3. 30,000 planned. The SpaceX company has plans to launch 30,000 Starlink V2 Mini satellites. It is incredible that they're attempting to launch so many mini satellites into space. And again, when I say mini, I meant smaller than the V2 version using the Starship system. These satellites are heavy and big. They're not small or miniature by any means. But the fact that there's going to be 30,000 of them orbiting the skies makes me wonder if they really plan about obstructing astronomers and amateur astrophotography people. Because you can imagine with 30 extra thousands of objects orbiting the skies and each of them reflecting sunlight, it's going to impact the skies quite a bit. With 30,000 of them, I think anytime you look up into the sky, you will encounter lights from the mini satellites. And that may not be what you want because you actually want to see planets or stars from the beyond. And so it is an interesting topic of debate of how many satellites they should launch. Currently, they are approved for 7,500 of the V2 Mini satellites. Alright, let's get into the next fact. Fact 4. Some deorbited. As we'll get into the next section, there's also new technologies on the Starlink V2 Minis, primarily the propulsion system. And because of this new technology, which is not yet proven, unfortunately, the first batch of the V2 Mini satellites are struggling to get into orbit. In fact, some have already been deorbited, meaning that the controllers in the ground intentionally disable them to climb and have them orbit down to the Earth and burn up in the atmosphere. This represents a financial loss for SpaceX because they effectively spent money launching these satellites into space and unfortunately have to bring them down, and thereby writing off the entire cost of the production of the satellite and the launch cost of the satellites. However, CEO Elon Musk mentioned that it is a good thing because it lets them learn from their failures what works and what doesn't. I think that's a good way to look at it, but also a very expensive experiment. Ideally, they should try to prove out their propulsion system before they actually launch a whole batch of them and have them, some of them deorbit and some of them not able to get into the right orbit level to sustain itself into space. Having them burn up in the atmosphere is such a huge waste, but unfortunately maybe it is just part of the iteration of refining these satellites. Alright, let's get to the next and final fact: argon Hall thrusters. As I mentioned in the previous section, some V2 minis have been deorbited because of problems with their propulsion system. On the Starlink V2 Mini, the propulsion system is very new. Hall thrusters are not new. They use ions to propel a space vehicle. However, the use of argon is very new. Most satellites use xenon gas to propel themselves, and the Starlink V2 Mini is the first one to use argon. SpaceX says that the argon Hall thrusters produce more propulsion and more thrust, and is more powerful than the xenon versions. However, they really didn't think it through because apparently the argon Hall thrusters are not working as expected. We'll see in time as they refine their Hall thrusters using argon and see if they could have a major breakthrough in use of argon gas. Alright, that's it for my video today. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.